persons from the media. It is a rather unfortunate situation that I am called upon to speak to today. I have seen on several occasions the disrespect of Dr. Anthony to people of religious faith in St. Lucia. But I think this one is unprecedented presently, because in most instances you have options available to you. I have seen Dr. Anthony engage in budget debates on Friday nights. I have seen persons who belong to a particular faith having been called upon to trample on the very religious beliefs that they stand for. And when a prime minister of a country cannot have regard for the freedom of its people to worship the God that they choose to worship in a manner that their conscience allows them to, it tells you that this country is in serious trouble, and this leader is truly a dictator, one who does not care about anybody else other than what he wants. I feel very personal about this because I'm a practicing Seventh-day Adventist. And not only Seventh-day Adventists observe Saturday as Sabbath in St. Lucia. There are other religions like Church of God and others. So you're looking at well over 25,000 people in St. Lucia who have an interest in what happens in the political arena. And for a prime minister who said that we did not get it right, as if he got it right, that nomination day would be Friday, only to find out that after the statement was made that he got it wrong. How many things have Dr. Kenny Anthony gotten wrong in this country in the past? I think everything he has laid his hands on, he got it wrong. And once again, we look at the situation that we are faced with. Elections being called on the 6th of June. 2 sets of exams. Schools now having to compete, students having to compete with people coming to elect a government on the same premises. You have a situation where a lot of people who usually worked on election day are also invigilators for CXC exams, throwing a country into total chaos and turmoil during a time when democracy should be the watchword of the day. When we see in other countries people having to fight for democracy, we are having our democracy being trampled upon by one man and surrounded by 16 other candidates who are voiceless, who cannot express a single word to say that this is not right. It is not fair to the young people, to the children whose future depends on how well they do at the CXC exams. How can you have such intensive campaign going on in every community when a child within the hearing of these loudspeakers would be expected to be studying, to be prepared for an exam that focuses on the future. And you tell me that this is a prime minister with a conscience, who understands the plight of the young people of this country and wants to tell them how education is so important, and you could not put election on a day when it would not affect these young people. On the religious front, I see it as a personal attack on me, along with every Sabbath-keeping person, that is Saturday worshiping person in this country. It tells us that the Prime Minister does not have any regard for any religion in this country. And I think if he had to do it on a Sunday, he would have done it the same way. So it is not even a question of whether he respects what Sabbath keepers, Saturday worshiping people focus on, or whether it be Sunday worshiping people. This is about Kenny Anthony and what Kenny Anthony thinks. And this level of arrogance should not be tolerated in this country at this point in time. We have two persons belonging to the Seventh-day Adventist faith who are candidates within Castries Southeast. Now I know it is the government who called the elections, so I want to know whether my opponent in Castries Southeast was consulted, because on one occasion he said Dr. Anthony told him after the Sabbath, come down to Suffren. So I want to know whether Dr. Anthony told him after Sabbath he should come to nomination. Because you see, it cannot be right that we as professed believers in God would say one thing and do something else. And so, the Adventist community, and I've spoken to a couple of my pastors this morning, and they have expressed that this is unprecedented. They are doing some research on it presently to see what the reaction is going to be towards that situation. The concern for me is not whether I can go and get nominated or whether I am not being nominated. The issue is, the bigger picture is that the Prime Minister of this country does not regard God and does not regard the religious faith of people of this country. And the question is, as he has attempted to do before, is he going to wipe out religion in St. Lucia and dictate what everybody should do? How can we have nomination day on a Saturday? Now people may call it convention, they may call it whatever they want. It is not right. It is not the right thing to do. It has deprived many persons. Can you imagine me not being able to go out to be nominated on that day? Can you imagine that Dr. Anthony said he would do anything to see to it that I am not in the Parliament of St. Lucia? And I want to know whether this was a deliberate ploy on his part to test where I stand on this issue and to know whether I will be able to be nominated on that day. And so he would have accomplished his mission even without having me going to the polls. So I want the people of St. Lucia, and because you may not be affected by this particular decision, I am particularly heartened by the position of my political leader and my colleague, Mrs. Sarah Flood Bobre, in highlighting that whether you belong to this church or that church, an infringement on the religious freedom which is offered to every St. Lucian under the Constitution, the right to practice their religion without interference by the state, is fundamental. In the great United States of America, a Seventh-day Adventist in the person of Dr. Ben Carson could have contested for the position to be the nominee for the position of President of the United States. Is Dr. Anthony saying by his actions today that no Sabbath-keeping person in St. Lucia is welcome to participate in the upcoming elections? And is he expecting that if he is going to deprive us of this basic fundamental right, but we have to go to the polls on election day when he calls it and vote for his party? Is that his expectation from the religious community? A rejection of any one religion is a rejection of all Christian faiths in this country. And as a result, I am calling upon all Christians in this country, not just Seventh-day Adventists, not just Catholics, every moral person in this country ought to stand and condemn the actions of the Prime Minister, because he has infringed on religious freedom today. What will he take away from the people of St. Lucia tomorrow? Today, it is our religious freedom. We saw the attack on the media when he introduced 361. We have seen several attacks on media personnel being accused, being threatened in the courts. We have seen how he went out to destroy the person he now calls Sir Vaughan Lewis. And we have allowed Dr. Anthony time and again to get away with it every time he does something that is arrogant. He sold the seabed. He went into an agreement to lease the entire seabed in St. Lucia. 83,000 kilometers of seabed. Up to now, nobody in St. Lucia knows what the agreement behind closed doors between Dr. Kenny Anthony and the persons of Grindberg, what their final agreement was and who got paid for what. We are making Dr. Kenny Anthony a dictator, and it is now time to stop him. And this election, whether I contest the election or not, the UWP must win this election to liberate the people of St. Lucia. And Christians, I am calling upon you, You heard from Mrs. Sarah Flood Bowman how Dr. Anthony stopped the prayers. He now wants to stop us from practicing religious freedom. And one of these days, he will decide which community you can enter in and which ones you cannot enter in. He will decide which streets you can drive on and which ones you cannot drive on. We take these things lightly because we play cheap politics with certain things. But anytime you begin to interfere with the fundamental basic rights afforded to a citizen under the Constitution, it raises an alarm. And everybody needs to pay attention to the direction that this country is going. And whatever happens, this election will determine whether this dictator continues and this dictatorship takes away all of our rights, or whether we elect a government who will respect the rights and the freedoms of its people. And the only party who has a track record of respecting the rights and the freedoms of the people of St. Lucia is the United Workers' Party.